I whatever noise has been created, whatever stories have been written, this has always been the sticking point. And put yourself in my shoes. If you step back to try to create a different role, because I felt as though it needed to come out, the other side of the story needed to be told. God forbid anything should happen, and I don't regret that at all.
The date is the 6th of February 2026, and the silence radiating from the Montecito Hills is heavier, thicker, and more suffocating than it has been in years. For the better part of a decade, the world has operated under a single, unshakable assumption regarding the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. The assumption was that Prince Harry would stand by Meghan Markle no matter what. Through the scandals, the royal fallout, the brutal headlines, and the non-stop public pressure, he was the picture of unwavering loyalty. He was the silent protector, the shield who absorbed the blows while she stood at the center of the storm. He was the man who burned bridges with his father, the king, and his brother, the future king, to ensure her happiness. But what he just admitted in a quiet room in California changes everything. Because this time, Harry didn't defend, he didn't redirect, he didn't soften the truth to make it palatable for a morning show audience. He cracked it open. And the final detail he let slip suggests that the story we have been watching for years may have been carefully rewritten by the one person who benefits most from his silence, Meghan Markle. For the longest time, Harry was the picture of devotion, the prince who walked away from the crown for love. But now, something has shifted fundamentally in the dynamic. In what insiders are calling his most unfiltered moment yet, Harry finally spoke, not as a royal, not as a symbol of rebellion, and not as a husband defending his wife. He spoke as a man who sounds like he is only now realizing what he gave up, and more importantly, who may have benefited most from that sacrifice. It happened last week at a private wellness summit in California. The event was designed to be a safe space focused on men's mental health, a cause Harry has championed for years. There were low cameras, minimal press, and a controlled environment designed to encourage vulnerability. Harry was on stage, looking relaxed, microphone in hand, talking about the usual approved topics of grief, resilience, and finding purpose. It was the standard script, the one he has recited 100 times, until one question slipped through the vetting process that cut far deeper than anyone expected. A moderator, perhaps sensing the heaviness in Harry's demeanor, asked him if he had ever felt like he lost himself in love. Harry froze. Witnesses in the room say his expression changed instantly. The media-trained smile that he wears like armor dropped. His shoulders stiffened. For a moment, it looked as though he might walk off the stage. But then, after a long, pregnant pause, he exhaled. It wasn't a theatrical sigh for the cameras. It was the sound of someone releasing a breath they had been holding in for 6 years. He answered quietly, saying that he did. He admitted there was a time he didn't recognize the man in the mirror anymore. He said he thought he was finding freedom, but then he delivered the line that is now echoing around the world. He said, "But sometimes, freedom can look a lot like a cage." The room went silent. Those words didn't just land, they detonated. Freedom can look like a cage. Everyone in that room, and everyone who has since viewed the leaked clips, knew exactly who and what he was talking about. He wasn't talking about the royal family. He wasn't talking about the British press. He was talking about his life in California, the life that was supposed to be his liberation. Behind palace walls and Montecito gates, sources say this moment was the result of months of pressure building quietly. It wasn't caused by a single argument or one explosive fight, but by a slow realization forming in Harry's mind, piece by piece, that the narrative of his life was no longer his own. According to insiders close to the Sussex circle, the cracks had already been widening during the slow-motion collapse of their Netflix ambitions. Meghan pushed forward with more projects, more visibility, more control of the narrative, and more demands for him to perform. Harry, meanwhile, wanted the opposite. He wanted peace, silence, and space. One source put it bluntly, stating that he is exhausted. He is tired of being the voice, the shield, the symbol, and the man who always agrees. For years, Harry believed he was rescuing Meghan, protecting her from an institution he viewed as cruel and suffocating, but now, quietly and painfully, that belief has begun to invert. He is starting to wonder if he was never the savior, but rather the one slowly being erased from the equation. That realization hasn't come easily. As Harry watches his old world continue without him, his brother William settled and commanding respect. His father focused on legacy, the monarchy adapting and surviving. He finds himself suspended in a strange limbo. He is no longer royal, but he is not fully free. He is surrounded by luxury, yet he is increasingly isolated. Insiders say Meghan, sensing this shift in his demeanor, has tightened her grip. Projects, appearances, messaging, even who Harry speaks to, everything they claim now passes through her filter, driven by a palpable fear that he might go off script again. And that is exactly what he did at the summit. Moments after the clip went viral, chaos reportedly erupted behind the scenes in Montecito. PR calls were made, media damage control teams were activated, and urgent messages were fired off to the event organizers to try and scrub the footage. But it was already too late. The internet had a name for it, Harry's slip of truth. And for the first time in years, when confronted about it by his wife, Harry didn't retreat. Since that day, the pattern has become impossible to ignore. There are fewer joint interviews, there are more solo appearances, there is a quieter, heavier presence about him. Friends say he is withdrawn, reflective in a way they have never seen before. One former military friend described it chillingly, noting that Harry used to be the loudest one at the table, the life of the party. Now, he just stares into his glass like he is somewhere else entirely. And then came the line that stopped that friend cold. In a moment of raw honesty, Harry admitted that sometimes he misses being invisible. Think about the weight of that statement. Here is a man who traded a palace for privacy, or so he claimed, now wishing he could disappear entirely from the life he built. That is when it becomes clear that the freedom Harry chased may have become the very thing that trapped him. The deals, the interviews, the global exposure, it all promised liberation, but it demanded constant performance. And as this story continues to unfold, one truth is becoming harder to ignore. This wasn't a single moment, it wasn't a mistake, it was the beginning of something finally breaking through the surface. What once looked like freedom now feels like a cage made of gold and guilt. This cage isn't just metaphorical, it is financial. Sources indicate that the pressure cooker environment in Montecito is being fueled by a terrifying burn rate. The security, the mortgage, the staff, the travel, the wardrobe, it costs millions of dollars a year just to keep the lights on in the Sussex empire. And with the Spotify deal gone and Netflix reportedly cooling, the cash flow is becoming a source of immense anxiety. Harry, who never had to worry about money a day in his life until he left the UK, is now facing the reality of the hustle. He is realizing that his freedom came with a price tag he can no longer afford. He traded the security of the duchy for the volatility of the marketplace, and the marketplace is turning against them. Meghan's response to this financial stress has been to push harder, to launch more brands, to sell more products. But for Harry, every new launch, every new jar of jam feels like another bar added to the cage. It reinforces the idea that their life is a commercial product, not a private sanctuary. According to insiders, Meghan can see it happening in real time. Harry is unraveling slowly, visibly, and publicly. But what is truly alarming to those around them isn't just that the marriage is struggling. It is what Meghan is choosing to protect. Sources say her focus right now isn't saving the relationship, it is saving the brand. Because this new version of Harry, the honest one, the reflective one, the man finally speaking without permission, is dangerous. He is not dangerous emotionally, he is dangerous strategically. One Hollywood insider put it bluntly, if Harry keeps talking like this, the illusion collapses, and once it cracks, there is no rebuilding it. That raises the question no one wants to ask out loud. Is this the beginning of the end? Because Harry isn't just sharing feelings anymore. He is exposing structure, control, identity loss, and the price of love when it is tangled up with power, cameras, and contracts. The most unsettling part is that he is doing it where it can't be contained. In public, every sentence feels like a test. Every pause feels intentional, like a man cautiously checking whether he is allowed to exist outside the script. And judging by what happened next, the answer from Montecito was a hard no. If Harry's quiet confession at the wellness summit sent shockwaves through the Sussex world, Meghan's reaction turned those tremors into a full-scale earthquake. The clip exploded online within minutes, garnering millions of views and endless replays. Insiders say Meghan went into immediate crisis mode. One source described the scene inside the Montecito mansion as absolute chaos. Meghan was reportedly pacing barefoot across the marble floors, phone clenched in her hand, voice raised, orders flying to her team to get the video taken down, regardless of the cost. But there was nothing to stop. The words were out. Freedom can look like a cage. No retraction, no clarification, no carefully worded joint statement could erase them. For years, Meghan had controlled the narrative with precision. Every appearance, every soundbite, every angle was calculated. This time, she lost the script. And according to people close to the couple, that loss of control hit harder than anything before it. Meghan confronted Harry the moment he returned home. What followed, insiders say, wasn't a disagreement. It was one of the most explosive arguments they have ever had. She accused him of betrayal, of making her look manipulative, of turning her into the villain in his story. One source claims Meghan told him outright that he had destroyed everything they worked for, that his words painted her as controlling, calculated, and cold, and that he handed the tabloids exactly what they wanted. But this time, Harry didn't retreat. For the first time in years, he didn't apologize. He didn't soften it. He didn't back down. He reportedly told her, "I didn't destroy anything. I just told the truth." 6 words. That was all it took to shift the power dynamic in the house. According to insiders, the room went dead silent before Meghan stormed out, slamming the door so hard it shook the chandelier. But the real explosion wasn't just inside that house, it was everywhere else. Online, the reaction was instant and brutal. Royal watchers dissected every frame. TikTok analysts broke down his tone, his posture, his pauses. They all landed on the same conclusion. Harry is finally cracking. Even the British press, the very machine Harry spent years fighting, sensed blood in the water. Morning headlines were merciless, speaking of cryptic confessions and trouble in paradise. And yet, something strange happened. Harry didn't look angry in the aftermath. According to a close friend, he looked relieved, as if saying it out loud had lifted something he had been carrying for years. It was like admitting the truth, even partially, allowed him to breathe again. The friend described it as a man finally acknowledging that this wasn't the life he thought he was choosing. But Meghan wasn't about to let that version of the story take hold. Within hours, she launched full-scale damage control, calling in favors, leaning on sympathetic journalists, and feeding carefully crafted narratives to select outlets. Articles began appearing almost immediately, claiming that Harry is fragile, exhausted, misunderstood. The spin was fast, polished, and ruthless. But it wasn't working because the clip didn't need interpretation. It spoke for itself. The PR strategy from the Sussex camp has always been aggressive, but this time it feels defensive, almost frantic. Meghan is reportedly terrified that the Harry narrative is slipping out of her hands. She knows that the public will always have a soft spot for the prince in pain, the boy who walked behind the coffin. If he turns on her, if he paints himself as the victim of her ambition, she loses the war of public opinion instantly. This fear is driving a wedge between them. She needs him to be the happy warrior, the devoted husband, the partner in crime. But he is becoming the sullen hostage, the man who looks at the camera with dead eyes. When Meghan's team tried to push the idea that the couple was stronger than ever, the internet pushed back harder. Comment sections filled with the verdict that he looks miserable and she is protecting herself, not him. The more they tried to smooth it over, the worse it looked. Behind closed doors, sources say the tension hasn't eased. It is thick, constant, and unavoidable. Harry, once the loudest voice in the room, has grown quiet, withdrawn, and thoughtful. That silence, that internal shift, might be the most dangerous thing of all because once someone starts waking up, they don't usually go back to sleep. The cracks have been visible for months, long before the summit. Take the recent incident at the Dodgers game. The couple appeared at the stadium, and the kiss cam panned to them. The script called for a cute, spontaneous moment, a kiss, a laugh, the picture of marital bliss. But Harry refused to play along. He didn't lean in, he didn't smile on cue. He looked tired. He looked done. It was a small moment, but it was a signal. Harry is refusing to perform. He is refusing to be the royal prop standing silently while Meghan directs the scene. He is tired of the image management. He is tired of the brand. This wasn't just a bad mood. It was a mini rebellion caught on camera. It was Harry saying, without words, "I am not an actor in your movie." Friends say Harry has become noticeably withdrawn. Not angry, not dramatic, just quiet. He spends long stretches alone, wandering the gardens late at night or sitting motionless by the fireplace, staring into nothing. According to people close to him, he has stopped answering calls from several of Meghan's Hollywood contacts. The glamorous social circle that once defined their California life is something he is quietly stepping away from, and that distance is intentional. One insider put it bluntly. He finally realized how isolated he had become. No family nearby, no old friends left in his daily life for years. The only consistent voice guiding his choices was hers. That realization, sources say, hit him like a tidal wave. He is living in a kind of Truman Show reality, where he is beginning to suspect that everything around him is a set piece designed for public consumption. Even his children, Archie and Lilibet, are growing up in this strange, curated bubble. Harry is reportedly terrified that his children will become content for the next Netflix deal. He looks at them and sees the same intrusion he fought all his life, but this time, the call is coming from inside the house. The realization that he might be complicit in the commodification of his own family is a heavy burden to bear, and it is contributing to his withdrawal. He wants to be a father, not a content creator, but in the Sussex household, the lines are blurred beyond recognition. That is when Harry started doing something no one expected. He began reaching out quietly, carefully, not to tabloids or public figures, but to people from his past. Old army friends, a former palace aide who had always looked out for him. These weren't calls about reconciliation or headlines. They were about grounding. They were about remembering who he was before the noise, before the deals, before the cameras turned his life into a performance. It is a quiet rebellion. He is rebuilding a support system that doesn't include his wife. He is reconnecting with the version of himself that existed before Megxit, the version that had purpose and camaraderie. He is looking for a lifeline back to reality. At the same time, Meghan was unraveling. Public sentiment was shifting fast. Netflix momentum slowed. Spotify was already gone. Invitations dried up. And the one constant she thought she could rely on, Harry's unquestioning loyalty, was no longer guaranteed. Insiders say she began planning a counter-offensive, a glossy, high-profile magazine feature designed to reset the narrative once again. The goal was to reposition herself as misunderstood, targeted, a woman unfairly blamed and battered by misogyny and misinformation. But this time, it didn't land. Hollywood didn't rush to defend her. Former allies stayed silent. Fashion editors, talk show hosts, even A-list friends kept their distance. The sympathy that once wrapped around Meghan like armor had faded into something far colder: silence. The Hollywood freeze-out is real. The agents at WME are struggling to book them for the kind of A-list events they feel entitled to. The Met Gala invites aren't coming. The Oscars aren't calling. The Clooneys, the Obamas, the Beckhams, they have all quietly distanced themselves. They see the Sussexes not as a power couple, but as a liability. They see the drama, the leaks, the constant victimhood, and they want no part of it. Meghan is realizing that her title gets her in the door, but her behavior is getting her escorted out. And without the adoration of the elite, her brand loses its luster. She is left with a title but no kingdom, a duchess with no court. And in that silence, sources say she began to crack. One staff member claims they overheard her late one night on a call, voice breaking, saying, "I gave up everything for him, everything. And now he's making me look like the villain." But here is the truth no one was saying out loud. Harry wasn't trying to destroy her. He was trying to find himself. That same week, Harry attended a private veterans gathering in Santa Barbara. No cameras, no press, no Meghan. Just a quiet room filled with people who knew him before the royal exit, before the documentaries, before the California sunshine turned his life into an illusion of freedom. Witnesses say Harry was emotional, at one point openly tearful. He told the group something that stayed with everyone in the room. He said, "You don't realize how lost you are until someone takes the compass away." Then he added quietly, "I thought I was doing the right thing, but somewhere along the way, I stopped being me." That admission spread through the veteran community fast, not as gossip, but as concern. The vulnerability of a man who had spent years under relentless scrutiny was finally showing through. He was speaking the language of loss, the language of a soldier who had left his unit and found himself alone in enemy territory. And this is where everything comes full circle. Shortly after, a journalist with deep royal connections dropped what can only be described as the final truth bomb. Behind the scenes, Harry has been quietly working with a publisher on a new personal project. One Meghan did not approve. It is not a documentary, it is not a memoir aimed at headlines or destroying his family. It is something far more dangerous to the Sussex brand. It is a raw, deeply personal manuscript centered on his identity, not theirs. It explores how love, loyalty, and sacrifice can slowly erase who you are. It is a philosophical reclamation of his soul. People who have seen early excerpts describe it as shockingly honest. No filters, no spin, no shared narrative. For the first time, Harry isn't telling Meghan's story, he is telling his own. He is writing about the grief of losing his mother not as a weapon to attack the press, but as a hole in his heart that he tried to fill with the wrong things. He is writing about the confusion of leaving his homeland and the emptiness of the celebrity lifestyle. This project is his declaration of independence. It is his way of saying, I exist outside of this marriage, I exist outside of this brand, and that terrifies her more than any headline ever could. Because once the man she tried to control starts speaking for himself, the illusion collapses, the brand fractures, the fairy tale dissolves, and there is no way to put it back together again. Harry, for the first time in years, seems ready to let it fall, and that may be the most honest thing he has ever done. The cage is open. The question now is whether Harry will finally walk out of it. If this story shocked you, don't keep it to yourself. The saga isn't over, it is just finally getting real. The world is watching to see if the prince will finally save himself, or if he will close the door and lock himself back in.